Watch where you were going. The voice cracked across the ballroom like glass shattering. A second later, a tray crashed. A gasp rippled, and hot coffee splattered across the immaculate white suit of the city's most powerful woman. Anna Volkov froze, blinking through the shock as liquid seared her wrist. The applause that had filled the gala only seconds earlier dissolved into stunned silence. Cameras clicked, phones rose. Every face turned toward the clumsy waiter now standing motionless, his hands still trembling around an empty silver pot. Keon Brennan's throat closed. The tray lay at his feet like wreckage. Around him, the glittering crowd of executives and investors formed a perfect circle of judgment. Someone muttered, "Unbelievable." Another whispered, "He did it on purpose." Security moved fast. 2 guards seized his arms, wrenching them behind his back. He didn't fight. He couldn't afford to. His heart was pounding too hard to explain what he'd just seen. The man behind the camera, the gloved hand that never reached for a lens, the cold calculation in his eyes. Anna was speaking now, her voice low but venomous. "You think this is funny? You've just ruined $1 million night." Keon tried, but one guard twisted harder. Pain shot through his shoulder. "Get him out." Her order cut through the noise like a blade. He looked at her once, meeting eyes filled with fury and humiliation. He didn't blame her for hating him. How could she know that the coffee wasn't an accident, that it was the only thing standing between her and a silent bullet? As the guards dragged him away, Keon's eyes darted toward the man with the camera. The photographer was already lowering his lens, expression flat, retreating through the crowd like smoke. The damage was done, but so was his mission. The last sound Keon heard before the ballroom doors slammed behind him was Anna's sharp, shaking breath. She would never know the truth. Not yet. The night after the gala smelled of reheated soup and antiseptic. Keon set his phone face down on the counter before it could light up again with another missed call from the catering manager. He already knew what it would say. "Fired. Don't come back." In the next room, an oxygen machine hummed softly, steady and rhythmic like the heartbeat of his world. "Daddy?" Her voice was small, barely more than a whisper, but it pulled him out of his spiral faster than any alarm. He walked to the narrow bedroom, every creak of the floorboard familiar. Kara sat upright in bed, her hair sticking to her forehead, the clear tube resting under her nose. The glow from the cartoon nightlight made her skin look pale, almost translucent.
"I'm right here, Pumpkin."
He adjusted her blanket, checking the flow rate on the portable unit. "Still good. You okay?" She nodded, the motion slow. "Had a dream you dropped all the plates again." He smiled faintly. "That one's not a dream anymore." Her giggle was weak, but it was music. The apartment was too quiet after she drifted back to sleep. He stood by the window, watching city lights blink through the smog like stars that had given up. He thought about the look on Anna Volkov's face. Shock, rage, confusion, and then about the cameraman whose hand never trembled. He'd recognized that poise instantly. Years ago, he'd moved through rooms like that himself. Before everything fell apart. Before the mission in Jakarta, he pressed a hand against the glass, as if the cold could stop the memory. He could still see the convoy, the smoke, the screaming. One mistake, one missed pattern, and a diplomat's son hadn't made it home. Keon had walked away with a fractured shoulder and a dishonorable discharge buried under private paperwork. The guilt never healed. He'd promised himself he'd never freeze again, not if someone's life was on the line. That promise had cost him tonight's job, maybe his freedom, but at least the woman in white was still breathing. He turned from the window and sat at the table. Bills were spread out like a losing hand. Hospital invoices, oxygen refills, the monthly rent that already carried a red stamp. He pulled out his phone and opened the calculator app. The numbers didn't lie. He was a week away from zero. 3 jobs in rotation, 2 on-call shifts, none enough. He rubbed his eyes until colors burst behind them. If he couldn't find another gig by morning, he'd have to pawn the old security gear in the closet, the only thing left from the life he used to. On the shelf above the table sat a photo, a younger Keon in a black suit beside a woman with warm eyes. Cora's mother, gone 7 years now. The same illness had started with her. The same shallow breaths that haunted him every night. He whispered to the photo, as he always did when the weight felt unbearable. "I'm still trying, Leah. She's still fighting." The next morning came without rest. He dropped Cora at the clinic for her scheduled oxygen therapy, pretending not to notice the pity in the nurse's eyes. They'd been there so often the staff knew her favorite Favis flavor. While she settled into treatment, Keon paced the lobby, calling every contact he could remember. Delivery routes, night janitorial shifts, kitchen work, No one was hiring. Not after the incident. The catering company's security footage had already gone viral, the coffee catastrophe as social media dubbed it. No one cared that the man in the photo had been calm and unshaken, that his posture was too rigid for a server. They only saw a waiter humiliating a billionaire. He could feel the weight of that label tightening like a noose. By afternoon he was back at the apartment, polishing his old wristwatch, a habit from the field. It wasn't working anymore, but it reminded him to stay measured, focused, alive. His phone buzzed once. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Mr. Brennan? The voice was calm, low, official. This is Detective Miller, with Metro PD. We'd like you to come down to the station to discuss last night's incident. His chest tightened. Am I under arrest? A pause. Not yet. The call ended before he could breathe. He looked back toward Cora's bedroom door. The hum of her oxygen filled the silence again. Everything in his life was fragile. Her lungs, his freedom, their survival. He reached into the drawer and pulled out his old badge case, the one he'd kept even after being discharged. The leather was cracked, the insignia faded. He pressed it shut, whispering to No Known, I did what I had to. Then he slipped it into his jacket pocket. If the past was coming for him again, he'd face it standing. And somewhere across the city, Anna Volkov, the woman he'd burned with coffee, was beginning to wonder why her would-be attacker had looked more terrified for her than she had been for herself. Keon had worked hundreds of events before, but this one carried a pulse that made his hands sweat before the first tray even left the kitchen. The Volkov BioArm Gala, a celebration of innovation, power, and people far richer than anyone serving them. Stay invisible, his shift lead had said. Smile, pour, disappear. Keon could do that. He'd been invisible for years. The ballroom was already alive with flashes and music, laughter that rang too loud, the kind that covered nerves. He moved between tables, steady and silent, refilling wine glasses, avoiding eye contact. His mind was half on Cora's oxygen machine at home, and half on counting tips that might cover next week's bills. Then the world shifted, not visibly, not to anyone else, but in that subtle way trained eyes recognized threat. By the far wall just behind the photographers, a man adjusted his lens. Nothing unusual, until Keon caught the glint of a small callus on the second knuckle of his right hand. Not from a camera grip, from a trigger. His chest went tight. He scanned the room, instincts roaring awake after 6 years of forced sleep. The man's stance was too balanced, his bag too structured, no company logo, no social chatter with other press. His eyes didn't. They tracked one target, Anna Volkov, the CEO, radiant and confident at the center of the ballroom, shaking hands and smiling for cameras. Keon recognized the predator's stillness. He'd seen it before in Jakarta, seconds before the blast. His pulse spiked. He turned, pretending to adjust his tray, calculating angles. The assassin's line of sight matched perfectly with the stage's edge, and the main exit. No bodyguards between. It was a clean corridor, a kill box. He felt his mouth go dry. He could approach the security staff, but what would he say? That guy looks suspicious. They'd laugh him off or worse, alert the target and trigger the hit early. He had no badge, no authority, just a cheap uniform and a reputation for silence. Anna's name was being announced. She started moving toward the stage, that signature white suit glowing under chandeliers. Every step she took aligned her with the barrel Keon could already imagine hidden inside that camera bag. Seconds, maybe less. He searched his station for options, anything that could break the pattern, distort the line, a tray of crystal flutes, a carafe of water. Nothing big enough, fast enough. Then his eyes landed on the coffee urn. Heavy, scalding. He didn't think. He acted. He grabbed the pot, wrapping it in a thin napkin that did nothing to block the heat. Pain sliced through his palm, sharp and real, a good anchor. He moved through the crowd, weaving between tables. Every step brought him closer to her, and to the man behind the lens. Anna was almost center stage now. Cameras turned. The announcer's voice echoed, proud and theatrical. Please welcome the innovator of the year. Keon's heart was hammering like a countdown. He reached her aisle. If he shouted, the shooter would fire. If he froze, she'd die. There was only one path left: chaos. As she passed, he stumbled deliberately. His leg buckled, tray tilting. The urn jerked. The liquid hit her like a wave, black, steaming, merciless. Anna gasped, her voice cutting through the room's applause like a scream. The ballroom erupted. Chairs scraped. Someone shouted for security. Cameras flashed faster. Keon didn't resist when hands grabbed him from behind, slamming him against a marble column. He heard her yelling, sharp, furious, humiliated. But through the blur he saw what mattered, the photographer lowering his lens, frozen mid-motion. Mission aborted. The assassin's jaw clenched once before he melted into the crowd, retreating calmly, silently, already gone. The chaos had worked. Get your hands off me. Anna's voice cut through again, commanding but shaken. She was surrounded now, staff blotting her suit, security tightening formation. Keon's vision pulsed. He wanted to tell her everything, that he knew the man, that she'd been seconds away from death, but the guard twisted his arm harder, pushing him toward the service door. "Sir, you're done," one hissed. Keon didn't fight. His focus stayed on her. The burns on her wrist, the fury in her eyes. She'd hate him forever, and he couldn't even blame her. When they reached the back corridor, one of the guards cursed under his breath. "What the hell were you thinking?" Keon managed. "I dropped it. I'm sorry." But his mind wasn't on the words. It was on the killer, on how precise the setup had been. He'd recognize that kind of operation anywhere. Too clean, too professional. Someone had paid heavily for this hit. He thought of the gala's timing, the press coverage, the investors in attendance. A perfect public tragedy, the kind that moves stocks, power, and legacies. The kind he used to prevent. His pulse slowed now, adrenaline turning to cold awareness. He'd just ruined his life to save hers. His pay would stop, his name would circulate in police reports, and the assassin would vanish until the next job. But Anna Volkov was alive. That had to mean something. The guards shoved him into the staff corridor where police waited to take him. As the door closed, he caught a final glimpse through the crack. Anna standing amid chaos, her expression twisting between rage and confusion, holding her scalded wrist as if trying to understand how everything had gone wrong in 1 second. She would never see the bullet that never came. And Keon Brennan, the waiter who spilled coffee on her, would become the villain of a story that no one yet understood. Inside, his burned hand throbbed, but he held his silence, because the truth, the one he'd just risked everything to protect, wasn't safe in words. It lived in the space between her heartbeat and the shot that never fired. And in that silence, he found a grim sort of peace. The holding room smelled like disinfectant and cold coffee, a familiar scent from a life Keon had buried long ago. His wrist still burned where the cuffs had bitten deep. Across the metal table, a police officer scrolled through footage on a tablet. Each replay was worse than the last. The tray tipping, the coffee splashing, the CEO recoiling in shock. Every angle made him look guilty. "Let's try this again," the detective said, voice steady but skeptical. "You walked up to a billionaire in front of 400 witnesses and threw hot coffee on her. Why?" Keon stared at the scratched surface of the table. The reflection in it, tired eyes, burned hand. A man unraveling didn't look like someone who could explain what had really happened. He spoke quietly. "It was an accident." "Accident?" The detective tilted the tablet toward him. "You weren't even supposed to be near her aisle." Silence. "Were you angry at her? Fired before the event, maybe? Wanted attention?" Keon shook his head. "No." The detective sighed and leaned back. "Mr. Brennan, you've got a kid, right? Medical bills, multiple jobs, no insurance. That's a lot of pressure. Sometimes people snap." Keon's jaw tightened. "I didn't snap." "Then help me understand what I'm seeing." He couldn't. Not without breaking promises sealed by the government, or worse, putting Cora at risk. If anyone dug into his past, into those unmarked files, it wouldn't just be him who disappeared wintly. The detective studied him a moment longer, then muttered, "You're not doing yourself any favors." He left the room. Through the small glass window, Keon saw his old catering manager pacing with an insurance rep, both animated. He caught one phrase, "Volkov's pressing charges." He lowered his head. It wasn't unexpected. He had humiliated her on live broadcast. Minutes blurred into hours until a new presence filled the doorway. Tailored suit, authority radiating from posture alone. Anna Volkov. Her wrist was wrapped, her expression unreadable. 2 bodyguards flanked her, the air around them tense and silent. The detective reappeared, trying to sound diplomatic. "Ms. Volkov, you don't need... I want to see him." Her tone left no room for argument. She stepped inside. For a moment, neither spoke. Her eyes searched his face as if trying to match the viral clip to the man behind it. Keon stood slowly. "Ms. Volkov, don't," she cut in. "You've said enough with your silence." He swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to hurt you." You did more than hurt me. You humiliated me. Her voice trembled, not from weakness but from the shock still under her composure. That gala was a milestone for my company, for father's legacy, and you turned it into a circus. He lowered his gaze. I'm sorry. Sorry? She repeated, the word sharp. You could have blinded me. You could have killed me. For what? A few headlines? He flinched but said nothing. Her eyes flicked to his burned hand, then back to his face. For a second she seemed to hesitate, searching for something human to hold on to. But the moment passed. She turned to the detective. I want to press full charges. Assault, reckless endangerment, everything applicable. Understood, ma'am. Keon's stomach hollowed out. He'd known it was coming, but hearing it out loud made the reality solid. Cora's treatment, rent, food, all evaporating with a single signature. The detective motioned for the guard. Let's process him. As they led him down the corridor, Anna's voice echoed behind him, softer this time, uncertain. I hope you think about what you did, Mr. Brennan. He did, every second. But she was thinking about the wrong danger. At the booking desk, reporters had already gathered outside. Cameras flashed as he was escorted through the door. Someone shouted, "Do you regret attacking her?" Another asked, "Was it political?" He kept his head down. The cuffs gleamed under the lights, the final touch to a perfect villain image. By morning, his name was everywhere. Waiter assaults CEO during charity gala. Corporate tragedy or publicity stunt. Talk shows dissected his posture frame by frame. Online threads debated whether he'd been drunk, bitter or just insane. Cora's nurse called from the clinic. Keon, they're asking questions about your arrest. Should I? He forced his voice steady. Just tell them it's a mistake. I'll fix it. He had no idea how. That evening, after posting bail with borrowed money, he stood outside his apartment door for a long time before entering. Inside, the hum of the oxygen machine was the only sound that still made sense. Cora looked up from her coloring book, eyes bright with recognition. Daddy. He knelt beside her bed, masking the tremor in his voice. Hey, Pumpkin. She studied his face. Why are you sad? He smiled weakly. Just tired. Did the boss lady get mad? His chest ached. Yeah. She got mad. She nodded solemnly, like she understood big people's tempers better than most. Then say sorry again. Mom used to say sorry fixes things. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. Sometimes it doesn't, sweetheart. But it's still worth saying. That night after she fell asleep, he watched the news on mute. Every channel replayed the footage of him spilling coffee, over and over. In one slow-motion clip, just before the urn tilts, he noticed the faint blur of movement in the background. The man with the camera already stepping back, preparing to vanish. Keon leaned closer, whispering, I saw you. He knew the city was crawling with ghosts like that. Men who didn't exist, whose faces changed as easily as names. And somewhere in the upper floors of that same building, Anna Volkov was probably watching the same footage, believing she'd survived embarrassment, not assassination. He couldn't tell her the truth yet. His silence wasn't cowardice, it was protection. For Cora, for himself, for the promise he'd once made to never let the innocent pay for secrets born in shadows. But the cost was mounting fast. By dawn he received the official termination notice from the catering company, and a letter from the event insurer citing negligent misconduct. His last source of income was gone. He folded the papers neatly, placed them in a drawer beside Cora's medical bills, and whispered, It's fine, I'll find a way. He always said that. But this time, even his voice didn't believe it. The cell was colder than it needed to be. Keon sat on the concrete bench, back straight, hands clasped between his knees, as if posture alone could hold him together. The fluorescent light above flickered every few seconds, enough to keep him awake when exhaustion begged him to shut down. He'd been questioned twice already, 2 detectives, 1 attorney he couldn't afford, and a public defender who couldn't care less. None of them believed the word accident. The reports all said the they thing: assault, humiliation, malicious intent. He had tried to speak once, to say there was more, that something bigger had happened in that ballroom. But the words died before they reached air, because saying too much was dangerous. There were rules from the old life he still honored, even if no one else did. He stared at the wall opposite him, and tried not to imagine the clock at home blinking 2:37 a.m. The oxygen machine humming beside Cora's bed, her soft breathing, the fear she'd wake up and call for him, and get only silence in return. He pressed his hands together until his knuckles cracked. He'd promised her once, I'll never disappear again. Now he had. The guard slid a tray through the slot. Something gray and lukewarm. He didn't touch it. Hunger was quieter than guilt. He lay back against the wall, closing his eyes. But rest didn't come, only flashes. The gloved hand on the camera. The angle of the lens. The calm of a professional. He knew that kind of calm. Trained it once. And for a moment the memory wasn't the ballroom but a street in Jakarta. Rain pouring, his earpiece buzzing with static before everything went wrong. The same calm before a shot he hadn't stopped. He jolted awake, breath ragged. The sound of boots echoed down the corridor. Another guard change, maybe morning already. He sat up, whispered into the emptiness. I did what I had to. No one answered. Across the city, Anna Volkov sat alone in a hospital suite that smelled faintly of sterile lemon. A bandage wrapped her wrist where the burns had blistered, and a doctor had insisted on observation overnight. But it wasn't the pain that kept her awake. It was humiliation. The replay played on loop in her mind. Her smile mid-speech, the sudden heat, the gasps, the splash of black liquid on her suit. A symbol of control turned into chaos in one instant. She had built her company on precision, composure, dominance. The press didn't see that. They saw a meme now, a trending clip of the coffee queen. She stared at the ceiling, jaw locked. That man will never work again, she murmured. Her assistant had already handled the PR. They'd called it an isolated incident. Security had released a statement. Her lawyers were drafting a civil suit. It should have been over, but it wasn't. Because beneath all that anger, something else gnawed at her, confusion. Just before the guards had dragged him away, she'd seen him mouth something toward her security chief. One word, photographer. At first she'd thought it was nonsense, a pathetic excuse, but the memory clung, unwelcome. The way his expression had changed in that split second. Not arrogance, not panic, but fear. Not for himself, for her. She sat up, swinging her legs over the edge of the bed. Her assistant stirred in the chair nearby. Ma'am, do you need something? Get me the event footage, she said. At this hour? Yes. The assistant hesitated, then nodded. Right away. When the footage arrived an hour later, Anna played it in silence. Every angle, every moment. She slowed the feed where he stumbled forward. It looked deliberate, but then, just behind her she noticed the man with the camera. His face half hidden, his eyes not on the stage but locked on her. Her pulse picked up. She rewound, zoomed in, frame by frame. The man adjusted his lens, then turned just as the spill happened. His mouth moved, no sound, but she recognized the instinct of someone who swore under his breath when a plan failed. The word photographer echoed in her head again. Could the waiter have known something? She pushed back from the screen, unsettled. No, it was ridiculous. Conspiracies didn't happen in ballrooms full of billionaires. She'd already looked foolish once. She wouldn't indulge paranoia now, but doubt had a way of whispering even when logic shouted. She turned off the tablet, rubbing her temple. The bandage tugged against her skin. The room felt too quiet. Ma'am, her assistant asked gently, should I finalize the charges? Anna hesitated. Yes, she said finally, but have security recheck every press badge from last night. Every one. Back in his cell, dawn broke in gray light that didn't quite reach the corners. Kian sat up when the guard announced his release on bail. A volunteer from a church outreach had covered it. Someone who didn't even know him. Just another forgotten name in a system that ate men alive. He signed the forms, retrieved his burned jacket, and walked out into the weak sunlight, like a ghost returning to a world that had already moved on. Outside, a woman waited with a clipboard. Mr. Brennan, you're required to appear for arraignment Monday morning. He nodded, barely hearing her. The air was sharp, biting. Somewhere above, the hum of traffic drowned out his thoughts. He headed straight home, every step heavier with what he'd lost. His badge, his silence, his daughter's trust. When he reached the apartment, Cora was awake, coloring at the table. She looked up and grinned, as if nothing in the world had changed. You were gone too long. He smiled, forcing steadiness. I know, Pumpkin, but I'm back. She pointed at the drawing, a stick figure of him beside a woman in a long white coat. That's you and the doctor who helps people. He looked closer. The woman's face was blank, unfinished. You forgot her smile, he said softly. Cora shrugged. Maybe she's sad today. He pressed a kiss to her head and whispered, maybe she is. As he tucked her in that night, he caught himself glancing out the window every few minutes. half expecting to see a camera flash in the distance or a familiar figure watching. In another part of the city, Anna Volkov couldn't sleep either. Two people, two lives, both haunted by the same silence, one born of guilt, the other of doubt, and between them hung one unanswered word: photographer. Anna Volkov didn't believe in coincidences, not in her business, not in her life. And yet, 3 days after the gala, she found herself staring at surveillance footage that refused to behave like a simple accident. She sat in her office's private screening room, blinds drawn, sleeves rolled to her elbows, wrists still wrapped from the burn. On the wall, the same scene looped again and again, the moment just before the spill. "Pause there," she said. Her head of security, Victor Harlow, tapped the spacebar. The frame froze. Anna leaned forward. "Zoom in, on the left. That photographer." The screen magnified the man's face, or what little of it was visible. Cap low, ID tag turned just slightly away from the camera. The name on the lanyard read C. Meyer, but the photo was blurred, off angle. "Run that badge," she ordered. Harlow hesitated. "Already did. The credentials came through our event vendor, but the serial number doesn't match the rest." Anna looked up sharply. "You're saying it's fake? Or modified? The image doesn't exist in any press database. We checked the agency. They've never heard of him." For a moment the room was silent except for the low hum of the projector. Nana sat back, heartbeat quickening. "So you're telling me someone with falsified credentials was standing 10 feet from me with a clear line of sight and no one caught it?" Harlow's jaw flexed. "We're still investigating." She replayed the clip again, slower this time. The photographer adjusted his camera, just before Keon Brennan stumbled into her path, spilling coffee across her chest. The timing was surgical, not random, not clumsy. Her mind connected dots she didn't want to see. "Freeze it," she said again. "Look where his lens is pointed." Harlow did. The frame revealed a subtle but unmistakable trajectory, not toward her face, but directly at the upper chest level, where her heart had been seconds before Keon's interruption. Anna exhaled slowly. Jesus. For the first time since that night, her anger gave way to something else: unease. She turned to Harlow. "You were close when it happened. Did you see what Brennan said?" Harlow hesitated. He looked right at me and mouthed one word. "Photographer," she whispered. He nodded. "Yes. But in the chaos, I didn't think." She waved him silent, standing abruptly. Her reflection in the darkened window looked different now. Not the victim of humiliation, but a woman who had almost died without knowing it. "Where is he now?" "Out on bail, awaiting arraignment." She stared at the paused frame, Keon's expression frozen mid-motion. Not aggression, not panic, focus, purpose. "Drop the charges," she said quietly. Harlow blinked. "Ma'am?" "You heard me." She turned toward him. "This man may have saved my life, Victor. I won't have his daughter watching him go to prison for it." He frowned. "How do you know he wasn't part of it?" "I don't," she admitted. "But I know that kind of instinct. You don't fake a move like that. You act because you've seen death before." She shut off the projector. "Find him." Keon was back at his apartment, hands deep in dishwater, when the knock came. The rhythm wasn't police, too measured, too polite. He opened the door to find two people in suits. One flashed an ID. "Miss Volkov would like to speak with you privately." He tensed. "Am I under arrest again?" "No, sir. The charges have been withdrawn." For the first time in days, he didn't know what to say. Within an hour, he was escorted to the top floor of Volkov Biotech's glass tower, a place so clean and silent it made him feel like a smudge on marble. The elevator doors opened into a room flooded with muted light. Anna stood by the window, back to him, her white suit replaced by charcoal gray. The bandage was gone. "Mr. Brennan," she said without turning. "Please sit." He stayed standing. "I'll stand, ma'am." She turned then, studying him. His clothes were plain, his posture rigid. The burn on his hand had scabbed but not healed. "I reviewed the footage," she said. "You could have said something that night. You didn't." He met her gaze. "Would you have listened?" Silence hung for a moment. Heavy, honest. "Why didn't you tell security before it happened?" she asked. "I tried, but there's no polite way for a waiter to warn a billionaire she's about to be shot." Her expression softened slightly. "You recognized him, didn't you? The man with the camera." Keon looked away. "Something like that." "You were military." He hesitated. "Private security. Long time ago. And you still thought your only option was to throw coffee on me." He allowed himself a breath of grim humor. It worked. For the first time, a trace of a smile touched her face, thin but real. She crossed her arms, her tone shifting. You understand what that night cost me? Yes. And what it could have cost you. He nodded. I knew it the second I moved. Then why do it? He took a long breath. Because I've already lived with one mistake like that. I wasn't about to live with another. Her eyes searched his face, seeing the truth settle in his shoulders. You mean someone died because you hesitated once? He said nothing. He didn't have to. She exhaled slowly, pacing to the window. Below them, the city glowed. Tiny lives, unaware of the war that almost erupted in one ballroom. I owe you my life, she said finally. He shook his head. You don't owe me anything. Then consider it gratitude, she said. The charges are gone. The media will be redirected. Your record will stay clean. He hesitated. Why are you doing this? Because I'm not in the habit of punishing the people who save me. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. But if what I saw is what I think it is, someone wanted me dead, and that means this isn't over. He looked at her, wary. Then you need to disappear for a while. She shook her head. I don't disappear, I rebuild. A moment of quiet stretched between them. Strange, almost fragile. Two people who had been enemies 3 days ago, now bound by something they didn't fully understand. As he turned to leave, she said, Mr. Brennan. He paused. I'll find out who did this, she said, and when I do, I expect your help. He met her eyes one last time. You won't need to ask. The elevator doors closed behind him, and for the first time since that night, neither felt like the victim anymore. He walked out into the cool air, uncertain of what came next. But in some quiet, undeniable way, the bridge had been built. The next time Keon saw Anna Volkov, she wasn't surrounded by cameras, investors, or bodyguards. She was standing outside his apartment building, a sharp contrast of elegance against crumbling brick and peeling paint. He stopped in the hallway, stunned. How did you even find this place? Her gaze swept the narrow corridor. I'm a CEO, Mr. Brennan. Finding people is part of my job. He shifted awkwardly, lowering his voice so the neighbors wouldn't hear. You shouldn't be here. It's not safe. She gave a faint smile. That's exactly what I came to talk about. Inside, Cora's laughter filled the tiny space. She was sitting at the table, crayons scattered everywhere. Her oxygen tube was draped lightly over her ear, her energy brighter today.
Daddy, who's the lady?
Anna hesitated, not used to being called lady instead of ma'am or Madame Volkov. Keon crouched beside his daughter. Pumpkin, this is Miss Anna. She's someone I helped at work. Cora's eyes went wide. You mean the coffee lady? Keon froze. Anna blinked. Then to his surprise laughed. Not a corporate laugh, a real one. Soft, almost startled out of her. Yes, she said gently. I suppose that's me. Cora tilted her head. Did it hurt a lot? Anna knelt down to eye level. It stung, but I think I'll survive. Cora nodded gravely, as if that was the best news in the world. Daddy's a hero. He doesn't like when people get hurt. Anna looked up at Keon. Something in her expression shifted. The boardroom armor cracked, revealing something human underneath. Well, she said quietly, it seems I owe him more than I realized. Later, when Cora was resting, Anna stood near the door. You didn't tell me you had a child. You didn't ask, Keon said, rinsing a cup in the sink. She studied him. The apartment was small but spotless, every surface organized, as though control was his way of breathing. I've arranged something, she said finally. A security detail will monitor your building discreetly. You and your daughter will be safe. He straightened. That's not necessary. It is. Whoever planned that hit hasn't been caught. If they wanted me gone, they might come after you too. He hesitated. I can take care of myself. Her eyes softened. Maybe, but she can't. That stopped him cold. He exhaled. All right, but only if they stay invisible. Agreed, she said. As she turned to leave, she added, and Mr. Brennan, I'd like to offer you something else. A job. He blinked. Doing what? Pouring safer coffee? The corner of her mouth twitched. Consulting. Discreetly. You've seen things my team missed. I need someone who doesn't think like a corporate guard. He frowned. You don't trust your own people? I trust results, she said simply. And you've proven you can deliver them under pressure. He leaned against the counter. I don't want charity. It's not charity, she said. It's survival, for both of us. By the next week, Keon found himself standing in the gleaming headquarters of Volkov Biotech, a place that felt like another planet compared to his old world. The receptionist greeted him nervously. His viral fame as the coffee attacker turned hero hadn't yet faded. Anna's office was minimalist. Panoramic glass overlooking the skyline. She gestured to a chair. I've assigned you temporary clearance. You'll work directly with Harlow and my data analysts. He scanned the files laid out on the table. Photos, invoices, guest lists, security rosters, layers of normality, hiding one precise thread. This isn't an amateur job, he said. Whoever forged that press badge had inside access. She nodded. My thought exactly. For hours, they combed through data together. Keon's questions were sharp, direct, years of dormant instincts rekindling. Anna, used to commanding rooms, found herself listening instead. At one point she caught him tracing the logo of the event vendor with his finger. That name means something, she asked. He nodded slowly. This company used to subcontract security gear for diplomatic sites overseas. Most of their tech ended up repurposed. Her brow furrowed. Repurposed how? He looked up at her. For hits like the one that night. The room went silent. Anna sat back, her jaw tightening. Then someone close to me knew where I'd be, when and exactly how to get close. He nodded. You said your father founded this company? She blinked. Yes. Why? He hesitated. Because most assassination contracts start with inheritance, not ideology. She stared at him, realization slowly dawning, that this wasn't about business rivalry, this was about legacy. In the days that followed, they worked side by side, long hours bleeding into nights. Anna began to notice small things about him. The way he always positioned himself facing the exits. How he flinched slightly at loud noises, but steadied himself each time. How he never wasted words. And Keon noticed her too. Not the CEO from television, but the woman beneath the titles. She stayed late with her staff, remembered every name, corrected mistakes without humiliation. There was steel in her, yes, but also guilt, the kind that came from carrying something alone for too long. One evening she found him standing by the window after hours, reviewing surveillance stills. You haven't stopped since morning, she said. You can go home. He shook his head. Can't rest until the pattern makes sense. She approached quietly. You ever take a break, Mr. Brennan? He smirked faintly. When my daughter forces me to. She's special, Anna said. Reminds me of something I lost. He glanced at her. You have family? Had. She corrected softly. My father built this empire with his bare hands. He believed control was love. I used to think so too. He studied her face, not the cold perfection of a corporate leader, but the fragility she tried to hide. Control's an illusion, he said. Sometimes the only power we have is who protect. Their eyes met. Two different worlds, briefly the same. A week later Anna visited his apartment again. Cora was painting at the table, humming quietly. Miss Anna, the girl said brightly. Want to help me color? Anna hesitated, then surprisingly took a seat beside her. She picked up a crayon, unsure what to do with it. Cora giggled. You're doing it wrong. Anna laughed. Actually laughed, a sound that startled even her. I'm out of practice. Keon watched from the kitchen, arms crossed but smiling despite himself. When Cora excused herself to watch cartoons, Anna looked up at him. She's remarkable. She's tougher than I'll ever be, he said quietly. Anna studied him. You raised her alone? He nodded. Since she was 3, her mom was sick too. Same condition. Her expression softened. I'm sorry. He shrugged. We get. Silence settled, comfortable this time. For once the air between them wasn't about business or survival. It was about two people who understood loss. Mr. Brennan, she said after a while, I owe you more than protection or a paycheck. You gave me perspective. I forgot what courage looks like when it's not wearing a suit. He smiled faintly. And I forgot not every CEO forgets they're human. They both laughed quietly, a sound that felt like release. Later that week, Anna hosted a closed security review at her headquarters. Carlo presented his findings, 2 internal logins traced to a corporate subsidiary registered under an alias. Keon leaned forward. Who controls that account? Anna's expression hardened. Donovan Croft, my father's former partner. He's still on the board. The room went still. Then we know where to look, Keon said. Harlow frowned. We don't have proof yet. We'll get it, Anna said. Whatever it takes. When the meeting ended, she turned to Keon privately. This might get dangerous. He met her gaze. It already is. Why stay involved? She asked quietly. You've done enough. He glanced toward the window, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. Because if someone's willing to kill for power, They don't stop with one failure, and because you're the only one who believed me when you didn't have to. Anna said nothing, but the look she gave him said everything. Gratitude, trust, and something unspoken growing in the quiet spaces between them. That night, after he'd gone home, Anna stood at her office window, watching the city hum below. For the first time in years, she didn't feel entirely alone. Down the street, Keon tucked Cora into bed. She smiled sleepily and murmured, "Daddy, is the coffee lady your friend now?" He chuckled softly. "Maybe, Pumpkin. Maybe she is." Cora's eyes closed. "Good, you both looked lonely." Her words lingered long after she drifted off. And somewhere across town, Anna Volkov smiled without knowing why. The bridge that had begun in chaos was now something fragile but real, built not from power or debt, but from shared wounds slowly healing in the light. The closer they came to the truth, the more the world began to fight back. For 2 weeks, Keon and Anna worked quietly through encrypted data and internal memos, tracing every payment, every subcontractor tied to the fake press credentials. The trail always circled back to the same man, Donovan Croft, her father's longtime partner, the company's chief operations officer and a master at smiling through secrets. At first it was subtle. Files disappeared. Access logs showed timestamps that didn't match human behavior. Midnight entries, auto-purged archives. When Keon tried to cross-check an invoice, the database returned a clean slate, like the evidence had never existed. "He's scrubbing," Keon said one night sitting across from Anna in her private office. The glow of the monitor painted dark circles under their eyes. "Croft's ahead of us. He's been watching our access trail since the first day you hired me." Anna rubbed her temple. "How?" "I authorized your clearance myself." "He's board level," Keon replied. "He doesn't need permission. He built this system." She stared at the empty screen, the missing files like ghosts mocking them. "Then everything we found, gone," Keon finished. "For now." Anna stood, restless energy replacing her usual poise. "There's gotta be a backup, an offline drive, something." Keon shook his head. "He's too careful. If he went through the trouble of setting up a fake hit, he won't leave breadcrumbs lying around." Anna turned toward the window, anger and helplessness mixing in her voice. "You think I built this company, but the truth is Croft's been managing half of it since my father died. I trusted him with everything." Keon said quietly, "That's how men like him work. They hide in loyalty." By the next morning, things began to unravel faster than either of them expected. It started with an article, anonymous sources from within Volkov Biotech, claiming that Anna had hired a disgraced ex-security operative as a personal consultant, possibly connected to the assault at her own gala. The piece included a blurry image of Keon walking into her building, captioned, "The waiter returns." Within hours, every news outlet picked it up. Anna's assistant burst into her office mid-meeting. "Ma'am, it's everywhere." Anna's eyes flicked across the screen. Her stomach dropped as she read line after line of speculative fiction turned public perception. Keon's military discharge, sealed under privacy law, had somehow leaked. The narrative wrote itself, a volatile veteran, obsessed with power figures, lashing out for attention. "Who leaked this?" she demanded. Harlow, standing stiffly by the door, looked grim. "Croft's comms team is denying involvement, but I traced the metadata on the original post. It came from one of his subsidiaries." Anna slammed the tablet down. "He's not even hiding it." Harlow hesitated. "Ma'am, the board's requesting an emergency session. They're concerned about your judgment and the company's image." Anna's voice hardened. "Tell them they can wait." He didn't move. "They won't." Across town, Keon was already feeling the fallout. Police cars idled outside his apartment when he came home from a supply run. 2 detectives, not the same ones as before, approached him with restrained hostility. "Mr. Brennan, we need to ask you a few questions," the taller one said. "What now?" Keon asked. The detective flipped open a folder. Inside were screenshots of the articles, photos of him with Anna. "You've been working for Miss Volkov again." Keon's voice was flat. "Consulting. On what?" He met the detective's eyes. "Security." The shorter officer scoffed. "Funny, considering your record." Keon stayed still. "You know those files are sealed." The taller detective leaned forward. "You think that matters when the public sees you as a ticking bomb? If this story's true, you're not protecting anyone. You're manipulating her. You're dangerous." Keon's jaw clenched. "If I wanted her hurt, she'd already be dead." That earned him an instant glare. "Watch your tone, Brennan." He took a slow breath. "Either charge me or let me go. I've got a daughter waiting inside." After a tense silence, they stepped back. "Don't leave town," the tall one said. When they drove off, Keon leaned against the wall outside, hands trembling. Through the apartment window, he could see Cora's small face watching, confusion written across her features. He waved, forcing a smile. She smiled back, trusting him completely, the one thing the world was stripping away piece by piece. That evening, Anna arrived unannounced at his apartment again. He opened the door, expression guarded. "You shouldn't be seen here. The press is circling like vultures." "I don't care," she said. "I needed to make sure you were all right. I've had better days." She stepped inside, lowering her voice. "Croft's behind this. He's setting us up, erasing everything that points to him and feeding the board poison." Keon gave a tired half-laugh. "He's smart. Paint the bodyguard as the threat, and the victim as emotional. Classic misdirection." Anna crossed her arms, anger and guilt mixing in her face. "The board's demanding I suspend you from all duties." He nodded slowly. "Of course they are. I told them no. That'll cost you," he said. She met his eyes. "I know." For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of Cora's oxygen machine filled the silence. Then Anna noticed a crayon drawing taped to the fridge. 3 stick figures holding hands. "Daddy, me, coffee lady." Despite everything, she smiled faintly. "She's not wrong about the coffee." Keon's shoulders eased a little. "She likes you. Children see what adults forget too," Anna murmured. She turned back toward him. "We'll fix this, Keon. I'll go to the board myself. Tell them everything." He shook his head. "You'll only make yourself a target. Croft has eyes everywhere, even your comms. You confront him now, you lose." "Then what do we do?" "We wait," he said. "Let him think he's won. People like him get sloppy when they feel invincible." Anna hesitated. "And if he's not sloppy, then I'll find another way," he said quietly. "But you need to keep your distance. The more they see us together, the easier it is for him to spin this." She wanted to argue, but the exhaustion in his face stopped her. He looked like a man carrying more than one lifetime's worth of blame. "All right," she said softly. "Just don't vanish." He gave her a tired smile. "Not my style anymore." 2 days later, the board meeting convened. 12 members seated around a long glass table. Croft at the far end, calm and polished as ever. Anna entered to murmurs of tension. Cameras off, voices low. Croft began smoothly. "Anna, we're concerned about recent events. The press is framing your relationship with this former operative as reckless. Keon Brennan is the reason I'm alive," she said firmly. Croft smiled faintly. "That may be, but the optics are disastrous. Investors are nervous. Shareholders want assurance you're not being manipulated." "I'm not," she said. "What I'm doing is finding out who tried to kill me." Croft's eyes narrowed just slightly. "Be careful what you suggest." She met his gaze without blinking. "I am careful, Donovan. Always." When the meeting ended, she walked out knowing she'd lost ground. The whispers had begun, quiet, professional, poisonous. That night, Keon sat alone on the roof of his building, the city stretching endlessly below. He had no badge, no job, no allies left except the woman now being devoured by her own empire. He took out his old broken watch, the one he used to check before every mission, and turned the dial slowly. Below, sirens wailed in the distance. He whispered into the night, "You can erase files, Croft, but you can't erase what I saw." Still the wind carried back only silence. And for the first time since the gala, Keon felt truly alone. The protector branded the threat, the savior turned suspect, and the woman he'd saved fighting a war she couldn't yet win. Both of them outmatched, both of them waiting for the storm to break again. The rain returned the night the truth began to surface. Keon had always trusted storms. They covered sound, blurred vision, made the world honest again. He sat in the dim glow of his apartment, Cora asleep in the next room, as lines of code scrolled across his borrowed laptop. His fingers moved with the calm precision of a man who'd done this before. He wasn't the waiter anymore. He was the operative he had sworn never to be again. For days he'd been digging through fragments Croft couldn't erase. The faint digital echoes left behind in server backups, cloud mirrors and redundant logs. Every system, no matter how secure, had a shadow version somewhere. Croft's arrogance had been assuming no one would look that deep, and Keon was nothing if not thorough. He found it at 3:12 a.m., an encrypted archive hidden inside a benign database titled Vendor Billing, Q4. The algorithm was old, military grade, a signature he recognized instantly. It was the same encryption used by private contractors during black operations. He leaned back slowly, breath steady. Got you. The file required two-factor verification, and for that, he needed access to Volkov's secure terminal. He closed the laptop, grabbed his jacket, and left before dawn. Anna was already in her office when he arrived, exhaustion etched into her posture. She'd been awake since the board meeting, replaying every word, every smirk from Croft, every veiled threat, dressed as corporate concern. When Keon walked in, soaked from the rain, she didn't flinch. She'd stopped being surprised by him. "You found something," she said. He nodded, setting the laptop on her desk. "A buried archive in your vendor server, labeled harmless, but it's encrypted with an old ops cipher, same type we used for covert fund transfers." Her eyes widened slightly. "You can open it?" "With your system, yes. But once I do, he'll know." She met his gaze. "Then let's make it worth the risk." He slid the flash drive into her terminal and began typing. The decryption took minutes that felt like hours. Rain drummed faintly against the glass walls as the progress bar crawled forward. When the file finally opened, the room went utterly still. Inside were dozens of transaction logs spanning 5 years, offshore transfers, shell corporations, and payment memos routed through third-party security vendors. Each entry carried a coded remark. Keon recognized the shorthand. "These aren't invoices," he said. "They're contracts." Anna leaned closer. "For what?" He scrolled. "Asset removal." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "You mean assassinations?" He nodded once. "Croft's been laundering company funds to pay private contractors, every hit disguised as a consulting expense." Anna stared at the screen, her hand trembling. "Who were the targets?" He opened the subfolder labeled closed accounts. Names appeared. Journalists, former employees, a whistleblower from an overseas trial. Then one final name made her breath catch. Dr. Elias Koren, co-founder, Volkov Biotech. Ina's voice broke. "That's my father's partner. They said he died in an accident." Keon scrolled further, and the next file opened. A recording. Tinny audio, time-stamped, 7 years prior. Croft's voice came through, calm, calculated. "The old man's getting nervous. If Koren talks, everything unravels. Handle it quietly. Make it look like a crash." Then another voice. Unfamiliar, low. "Understood. Payment in full after delivery." Silence followed, except for the faint rustle of papers. Anna pressed a hand over her mouth. "He killed him. He killed my father's friend." Keon looked at her, his expression grim. "And I'd bet he planned the same for you once you got too curious." She stepped back, as if distance could help her breathe. "My entire company, everything we've built is stained with this." He closed the file gently. "No. Croft built the rot. You can still decide what survives." She turned to the window, rain streaking the glass like tears she refused to let fall. "All those years I thought my father's heart gave out from stress. He must have known something was wrong." "Maybe he did," Keon said softly. "And maybe that's why you're still alive. Because you were meant to clean up what they buried." Anna's reflection looked back at her, not the unshakable CEO, but a daughter realizing her empire was built on betrayal. She straightened, resolve hardening through the grief. "We take this to the police." Keon shook his head. "Not yet. If Croft gets wind of this, he'll vanish before the warrant's printed. We need more. A trail that leads to him directly." She hesitated. "What more do we need? We have recordings." "Recordings can be dismissed as fakes. Money trails can vanish. But voice verification tied to live accounts. That's irrefutable." She exhaled slowly. "You think you can get it?" He nodded. "If we move fast." That night, they worked in silence, 2 shadows in the tower Croft believed he controlled. Keon traced the offshore accounts, while Anna dug through board meeting archives, connecting Croft's coded transactions with corporate proposals timed perfectly before each accident. Each new discovery tightened the net. At one point Anna paused, watching him type. "You know, you could walk away right now," she said. "You've already done more than enough." He didn't look up. "And leave you to fight a man like Croft alone?" Her voice softened. "You could rebuild your life. Be with your daughter without this hanging over you." He glanced up, meeting her eyes. "Cora's the reason I'm doing this. Because one day, when she asks what kind of man her father was, I want her to know I didn't look away." Anna's throat tightened. "You remind me of my father. He used to say courage isn't what saves you, it's what saves what matters after you're gone." They shared a quiet moment, heavy with understanding. When the final trace connected, a series of encrypted calls routed through Croft's private line, Keon's expression hardened. We've got it. Anna leaned forward. What is it? He played the latest call. Kropf's voice again, recent, confident. The gala was a failure. She's still breathing, and now she's sentimental. We'll frame the waiter, finish the merger and lock down her shares. When she falls flightly. Anna's hand clenched into a fist. He wanted me dead so he could take control. Khan stopped the playback, closing the laptop. Now you have proof. Everything you need to bury him. But Anna didn't look relieved. She looked broken, not by the danger, but by what the truth cost. My father trusted him, she whispered. He built this company with him. How do I face that legacy? Keon stepped closer, his voice steady. By doing what your father couldn't, ending it. Her eyes met his, shimmering with both pain and resolve. You'll stay with me through this? Until the end, he said simply. At dawn, Anna stood on the same balcony where her father once made his speeches about innovation and integrity. Below, the city moved unaware, alive under the weight of lies now exposed. Keon joined her quietly, the flash drive in his hand, the proof of everything. This doesn't just clear your name, he said, it redefines it. She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. Then let's redefine the company too. No more shadows. As the sun broke through the clouds, painting the glass towers gold, Anna Volkov realized she was standing at the edge of two legacies, one of deceit, one of redemption. She chose the latter. And somewhere deep in her chest, beneath the grief and rage, something unexpected stirred, hope. But hope, she knew, would come with a price. The kind men like Donovan Croft never paid quietly. The boardroom had never been so crowded or so quiet. It wasn't just a meeting anymore. It was a spectacle. The press had been granted limited access to cover the signing of the Volkov-Ardent merger, a deal worth billions, the largest in the company's history. Cameras lined the far wall, their red lights blinking like patient predators. Anna Volkov stood at the head of the long glass table, immaculate in a white suit, deliberate symbolism, purity. Reclaimed, her movements were controlled, but her pulse pounded beneath the fabric. Around her, board members murmured, smiling for the cameras. Donovan Croft sat near the center, relaxed, silver cufflinks gleaming. He looked like the portrait of success, composed, trusted, untouchable. Keon stood at the back of the room, dressed in a plain dark blazer, anonymous among the security personnel. No one paid attention to him. Most had written him off as an aide or bodyguard. That was exactly how he wanted it. In his pocket was a small transmitter linked to the building's AV system. The recording rested on Anna's secure drive, ready to play on command. All it would take was one silent cue. Harlow, the head of security, stood near the door, their third silent ally. He gave Keon a subtle nod. Everything was set. Croft leaned forward, voice smooth as ever. Before we begin, I'd like to commend Ms. Volkov for her leadership throughout recent challenges. It takes extraordinary grace to recover from scandal. Soft laughter from a few board members. The media leaned in. Anna didn't flinch. Yes, she said evenly. It does take grace. Especially when the scandal is engineered from within. Croft's brow arched slightly. Pardon? Anna clasped her hands together. Donovan, before we sign anything, I think it's time we address the real merger, the one between greed and deceit. Whispers rippled around the table. The cameras shifted focus. Croft gave a controlled chuckle. Anna, this isn't the place for dramatics. Oh, I disagree. She took a step forward. It's the perfect place. After all, this is where my father once said the company's true face should always be shown in the light. Croft's smile faltered. I'm not sure what you're implying. She turned toward the investors. For months we've all believed our company's success was clean, that Volkov Biotech was built on integrity. But recent discoveries prove otherwise. The man sitting beside you has been embezzling funds and using our company's assets to pay for private contracts. Contracts that include murder. The room erupted. Voices collided. Shock, disbelief, denial. Croft rose, calm returning like a reflex. This is absurd. Do you have any proof, or are you just unraveling in public now? Anna didn't answer. She looked toward the back of the room to Keon. He pressed the button in his pocket. A soft click echoed through the speakers, followed by static. Then Croft's voice filled the room. The gala was a failure. She's still breathing, and now she's sentimental. We'll frame the waiter, finish the merger, and lock down her shares. When she falls quietly. The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Every face turned toward Croft. He froze, color draining from his cheeks. That's fabricated. Anna's gaze was ice. You can deny it, but your voice print authentication is already verified. Every transaction, every call, every lie, recorded, traced, and now public. Croft's composure cracked. You think this saves you? You're finished, Anna. The board won't side with a hysterical CEO backed by... He stopped himself, realizing the cameras were still rolling. But Anna didn't let him finish. She turned toward the investors. The man you trusted ordered assassinations, including the death of my father's co-founder, Dr. Elias Corin. He killed to protect profit. He even planned to have me eliminated when I began asking questions. Gasps swept the room. Harlow motioned subtly to the two uniformed officers waiting outside. Croft rounded the table, fury rising now that his mask had shattered. You think you're righteous? You don't know what this company cost to build. Your father was weak. He couldn't make the hard choices. I did what was necessary. Anna stood firm. You corrupted everything he stood for. He jabbed a finger toward her. You wouldn't have survived a day in his shadow without me. Every contract, every expansion, every piece of technology that made you rich, it came from decisions you were too naive to understand. Her voice sharpened. Then explain it to the police. Right on cue, Harlow opened the doors. Two detectives entered, badges raised. Donovan Croft, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, corporate fraud, and obstruction of justice. Croft backed away, disbelief flooding his face. This is a mistake. You can't. The officers closed in. Cameras flashed like lightning as Croft was handcuffed in front of the board he once ruled. His protests turned into incoherent rage. Get your hands off me. You'll regret this, Anna. You'll all regret this. Anna watched him go, her expression unreadable. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just resolute. When the doors finally closed behind him, silence filled the space again. But this time, it was a clean silence, like air after a storm. One of the investors finally spoke, voice trembling. Is it true, about Corin? Anna nodded. Yes. My father never knew the depth of what Croft did. But from this moment forward, Volkov Biotech will operate transparently, no hidden contracts, no shadow deals. She turned to the cameras. To those who've lost faith in what we stand for. I understand. I lost faith too, but today marks a new beginning. This company was built on human lives. It's time we start valuing them again. The reporters scribbled furiously, flashes painting her in white bursts of light. Then from the back, Keon stepped forward, reluctantly, quietly. He hadn't planned to move, but Anna's next words stopped him mid-step. I also need to acknowledge someone who deserves more than silence. Every head turned. This man, she said, motioning to Keon, was once called a criminal, a clumsy waiter who humiliated me in public, but in truth he saved my life. The night of the gala, there wasn't an accident, there was an assassination attempt, and while I stood unaware, Keon Brennan risked everything to stop it. The room murmured. Confusion, admiration, disbelief. She continued, voice steady but full of emotion. He didn't speak up because he couldn't. He carried secrets heavier than most people ever will, but without him this company wouldn't exist. I wouldn't exist. Keon shifted uneasily under the weight of attention. That's enough, Ms. Volkov. She smiled faintly. You said once that control's an illusion, that all we can really choose is who we protect. Today I choose to protect the truth. He met her gaze, gratitude passing silently between them. The lead reporter raised a hand. Mr. Brennan, is that true? Did you really save her life? Keon hesitated, then said simply, I just did what anyone should do when they see something wrong, even when it cost you everything. He glanced toward Anna. Some things are worth more than everything. When the press conference ended, the cameras were still buzzing with questions. The story was already racing across headlines. CEO exposes murder plot, executive arrested live. From waiter to hero, the man who saved Volkov Biotech. But in the quiet that followed, away from the flashes, Anna and Keon stood alone in the hallway outside the boardroom. She exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. It's over. He nodded. Not yet. Croft still has people loyal to him. They'll scramble to protect what's left. I'll handle that, she said. Legally, publicly, transparently. For once, no shadows. He smiled faintly. That'll be a first for a corporation. She gave him a look, half amusement, half gratitude. You don't know how much I owe you. He shook his head. You don't owe me a thing. Her expression softened. Then let me thank you anyway. There was no pretense left between them. Just exhaustion. honesty, and something like mutual respect. She looked toward the end of the corridor where the rain had begun again outside the glass wall. "It's strange," she murmured. "The night we met, I thought you were my downfall. Turns out you were my beginning." He smiled quietly. "You sure about that? Most people don't see their beginning in a coffee spill." She laughed, really laughed this time, the sound echoing down the marble hall. "Well, I'm not most people anymore." Hours later, as dusk settled over the city, Anna held a press statement in her hand. It wasn't legal jargon or a corporate shield, it was personal. "In every system there are those who believe power grants them permission," it read, "but the soul of any company, any nation, any person, lies in the ones who refuse to look away. Mr. Brennan, and to everyone who still believes integrity is worth fighting for. Thank you." She handed it to her assistant and said, "Release it." Downstairs, Keon stepped out into the rain, phone buzzing non-stop with interview requests he'd never answer. He ignored them all. He was just heading home back to the little apartment where a small girl waited to hear that everything was okay again. As he reached the curb, he looked up. On the giant screen outside Volkov Tower, the live broadcast replayed the moment Croft was led away in cuffs. Then it cut to Anna's speech, calm, fierce, unwavering. He smiled. Justice, for once, had a face. And for the first time since the gala, the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was peace, the kind that comes only after truth wins. 3 weeks later, Volkov Tower no longer smelled of fear. The endless hush of secrecy that once haunted its corridors had been replaced by motion, laughter, the noise of rebuilding. Employees moved through the glass halls, not as watchers or survivors, but as participants in something newly honest. The walls that once echoed Kropst's manipulation now carried new light. The media still spoke of the scandal. Corporate coup turned redemption arc, they called it, but the company's stock hadn't crashed as predicted. Instead, it stabilized, climbing slowly under public trust reborn. Anna had rewritten her father's legacy, not with another deal or acquisition, but with an act of exposure that shocked the world into remembering what integrity looked like. The board had been restructured. The old guard resigned quietly, replaced by auditors, scientists, and a rotating ethics council made up of external members. Anna insisted that every major decision pass through that council. "No more gods in glass towers," she had said. Her leadership was no longer built on power. It was built on accountability. But even with the empire reborn, she carried the ghosts of the past carefully, not as burdens, as reminders. And one ghost in particular still lingered with warmth instead of pain. Keon Brennan had vanished from the headlines the moment the dust settled. He turned down interviews, refused sponsorships, declined every talk show invitation that wanted to turn him into a symbol. He didn't want fame, he wanted quiet. His days returned to simple patterns: breakfast with Cora, morning walks to her clinic, afternoon repairs around the apartment. He kept his old jacket, the one burned at the cuff, folded neatly in the closet. It smelled faintly of coffee and resolve, but even as peace returned, some habits refused to die. He still checked reflections before stepping into rooms, still scanned crowds automatically, still slept lightly. You could take the soldier out of duty, but you could never take duty out of him. Yet now, it wasn't ghosts that woke him at night, it was hope. Cora's laughter filled the clinic hallway as she raced her nurse in a wheelchair. Her oxygen tube was gone now. The experimental therapy had begun to show results faster than any of the doctors expected. When Anna arrived at the clinic for the first time since the merger, she found them like that, father and daughter bathed in afternoon light. A moment so simple it felt sacred. "Miss Anna," Cora shouted, her joy cutting through the sterile air. Anna smiled, kneeling as the girl rolled toward her. "I heard you've been running this place lately." "I'm faster now," Cora said proudly, pointing to her legs. "The doctors say I'll be able to walk without help soon." "That's because you're braver than the medicine," Anna said, genuine warmth softening her voice. Keon appeared from the side room wiping his hands. "Didn't expect to see you in a hospital hallway again." Anna stood, extending a hand. "I owed you a visit, and some news." He shook her hand lightly, careful, polite. "Good news, I hope." She nodded. "The Foundation Board approved permanent funding for the pediatric care program named after your daughter." He blinked. "Koretz Foundation?" "Officially, yes," Anna said, smiling faintly. "Unofficially, it's for every child who shouldn't have to pay for survival." Keon looked at her for a long moment, searching her face. "You didn't have to do that." "I did," she said, "because when I looked at this company's books after everything, I realized how much blood money was still sitting idle. I couldn't erase what was done, but I could change what it does next. Cora tugged her father's sleeve. Does that mean I get a statue? Anna laughed. Maybe a playground instead. Cora gasped. With slides? With slides, Anna promised. The child grinned, then zoomed away, the nurse chasing her, laughter echoing through the hallway like the sound of freedom itself. For a while, Anna and Keon stood in silence, watching her. She's different now, Anna said softly. So much life in her. She always had it, he said. I just needed to buy her enough time to show it. Anna turned to him. You bought more than time, Keon. You gave me back my life, my name. He smiled faintly. And you gave me back my faith. That people in your world can still care about something other than profit. She met his eyes. You sound like my father. Maybe he was right about you, Keon said. You weren't meant to inherit his company. You were meant to redeem it. Anna looked away, blinking against a sudden well of emotion. I wish he could see it now. He does, Keon said quietly. In everything you fixed. Later that week, Anna invited him to the tower again. Not for business but closure. When he entered the main lobby, it felt transformed. Gone were the cold marble floors and silent walls. The atrium had been redesigned to feature portraits of researchers, engineers, nurses and families, whose work defined the company's new purpose. At the center hung a plaque engraved with the company's new credo, Truth Heals. Anna waited by the plaque, holding a small envelope. This came for you, she said. He frowned, opening it. Inside was a letter embossed with Volkov Biotech's new seal, and a simple message. In recognition of extraordinary courage and integrity under impossible circumstances, Volkov Biotech names you Honorary Chief of Security Ethics. Keon laughed softly. Honorary. She smiled. You've had enough danger. This is just a title and a lifetime partnership with the Foundation. Cora's treatment will never cost you another cent. His voice broke slightly. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, Anna said gently. Just let yourself breathe. He nodded, exhaling slowly, as if for the first time since the gala. For a moment they stood side by side, reading the plaque together. Anna said quietly, Do you ever think about that night? Every day, he admitted. But not for the reason you think. I used to wonder if I did the right thing, if the cost was worth it. And now? He smiled faintly. Now I think it was the only thing that made sense. Anna folded her arms. Funny, I used to think power meant control. Now I see it's just responsibility wrapped in illusion. You tore that illusion apart for me. He looked at her. And you showed me that redemption doesn't need a uniform. For a long time, neither spoke. The silence between them was different now, no longer wary, no longer weighted. It was gratitude wearing the shape of calm. Weeks later, Anna visited Cora's new clinic opening, the one named in her honor. Reporters gathered, children waved miniature flags with the Foundation's logo, and doctors shared smiles that reached their eyes. When Anna stepped up to the podium, she paused, scanning the crowd until she found Keon and Cora in the front row. She began softly. When I took over Volkov Biotech, I thought my job was to protect its profits. But one man and one little girl taught me something else. That sometimes, the most valuable thing you can protect is someone's tomorrow. The audience listened quietly. Anna continued, Truth cost us everything we thought mattered. Our comfort, our reputation, our illusion of safety. But it gave us something better. It gave us peace. She looked toward Keon. And peace, as I've learned, isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of courage. Applause swelled, but Keon only smiled quietly, pride and humility balanced in his eyes. Cora clapped so hard her crayon flew out of her hand. Daddy, she's talking about you. He chuckled. Maybe about both of us. Anna ended her speech with a line her father once used. We heal by truth, not by silence. The crowd rose to their feet. After the ceremony, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Keon and Anna stood together outside the new playground. Cora ran between swings, her laughter carried by the wind. She's going to be okay, Anna said softly. He nodded. Because of you. Because of us, she corrected. He smiled. You ever regret anything? She looked at him. Only that it took so long to meet someone who made me see the world clearly. Even if it started with coffee burns. That earned a laugh, quiet and real. Especially because of that, they fell into comfortable silence. The city hummed around them, alive again. For once, neither of them was fighting. Neither was surviving. They were simply living. Anna finally said, Do you think people like us ever stop carrying the past? Keon shook his head. No, but we learn to carry it better. She nodded thoughtfully. Then maybe that's healing, not forgetting but carrying light instead of fear. He looked at her with quiet understanding. You're not the same person I met that night. She smiled. Neither are you. They stood that way for a long time, watching Cora climb a small slide painted gold, her laughter echoing off the glass towers, the sound of innocence rebuilt. And in that sound, Anna heard redemption. Keon heard peace. Both knew the truth had cost them everything comfortable, but it had given them something infinitely greater, freedom. Later, as twilight stretched over the city, Anna walked back toward her car. Cora ran up, breathless. Miss Anna. Daddy says thank you. Anna knelt, smiling. Then tell your daddy he's welcome. Cora tilted her head. He also said you don't smile enough. Anna laughed softly. He's right. Cora beamed. Then smile more. It makes people brave. Now touched the girl's cheek gently. I'll remember that. As Cora skipped back to her father, Anna looked once more at the plaque above the playground gate. For the ones who believed courage could heal. The words shimmered under the fading light. For the first time since her father's death, Anna Volkov felt completely unburdened. Not victorious, not untouchable, simply free. She turned back toward Keon and Cora, framed in the glow of the setting sun. They were laughing at something small and unimportant. The kind of laughter that meant the storm had passed. Anna smiled, just as the child had asked. And for the first time it reached her eyes. The city had softened by the time autumn returned. The glass towers that once reflected power now shimmered with something quieter, renewal. Keon Brennan stood on the small balcony of his apartment, the same one where he'd once watched the world through fatigue and fear. Now it was just light and wind. Behind him, laughter spilled from the kitchen. Cora's, bright in the light. She was stronger now. Her hair had grown thick again. The oxygen tank had long since been replaced by running shoes and paintbrushes. A miracle of science. Yes, but more than that, a miracle of persistence. Anna Volkov arrived just as the sun began to fall. She didn't bring guards or assistants anymore. She didn't need them. She carried a simple brown paper bag and an easy smile. Cora spotted her first. Miss Anna, she shouted, darting to the door. You're late. Anna laughed, bending to hug her. I brought peace offerings, cinnamon rolls. Daddy says those make people forgive anything, Cora said solemnly. Anna grinned. Then they're perfect. Keon emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. I told her she can't bribe her way through life. Anna held up the bag. Says the man who saved mine with a coffee spill. He chuckled, shaking his head. You'll never let that go, will you? Never, she said softly. They sat together on the balcony as twilight settled. Cora curled up with a sketchbook at their feet. For a long while they just watched the sun bleed across the horizon. The quiet rhythm of a day dang without conflict, without fear. Anna sipped her tea, her voice low. The board finally approved the full ethics charter. It's strange, for the first time I feel like my father's company belongs to everyone who works where, not just the people whose names are on the door. Keon nodded. You turned it into something honest. He'd be proud. She looked at him, the sunset catching the gold in her eyes. And you? How's your new title treating you? He smirked. Director of Corporate Security. Sounds impressive, but mostly I just make sure no one sneaks coffee near you again. Anna laughed quietly, the sound soft as wind. You know, when I first met you, I thought I was looking at failure. Mine, yours, everyone's. Now I realize it was the only honest moment in that entire room. Keon turned toward her. Maybe truth has to spill a little before people see it. They both smiled at the thought. Simple, human, true. Cora interrupted them, holding up her drawing. It was 3 figures standing under an orange sky. A tall woman, a man holding her hand, and a little girl between them. Above she'd written, Heroes don't wear suits. Anna blinked, her throat tightening. She's an artist. Keon nodded, smiling faintly. She just paints what she sees. For a moment neither adult spoke. The silence between them wasn't the kind born of distance. It was peace. The kind earned, not inherited. Anna leaned back, watching the light fade. Do you ever think about legacy, she asked. Keon thought for a while before answering. I used to think it meant leaving something behind. Now I think it's about what you protect while you're here. Anna nodded slowly. Integrity isn't about how high you climb. It's about what you stand for when everything's taken away. He looked at her, a quiet pride in his voice. You stood tall when everyone told you to kneel. She smiled. Only because someone once reminded me that truth doesn't need permission. They sat in silence as the city lights flickered to life, one by one, tiny lanterns of continuity. The world went on, not perfect, but mended. Inside, Cora hummed softly, the scent of cinnamon and tea mingling with the cool air. Anna rose, slipping on her coat. You know, she said, the night you spilled that coffee I thought I'd lost everything. And now? He asked. She glanced back, her expression soft. Now I think it was the moment I started earning it. He smiled, eyes following her as she walked toward the elevator. Thank you, Anna. She paused at the doorway, meeting his gaze one last time. No, thank you, for reminding me that courage doesn't wear a title. It just shows up when it's needed. The door closed gently behind her. Keon turned back to the balcony, watching the last light fade into evening. Cora climbed into his lap, curling against his chest. Daddy, she whispered, is the world good now? He kissed her hair. It's getting there, Pumpkin. She nodded sleepily. Because you helped? He smiled. Because we all did. The city breathed around them, calm, resilient, whole, and as the final rays slipped below the skyline, Keon's voice faded into quiet narration, steady, human, hopeful. Legacy isn't what you build, it's what you heal. It's the courage to do right when no one's watching, and the grace to forgive once truth is finally seen. He looked toward the horizon, a man who had lost everything and gained something purer in return. Tell us where you're watching from and what legacy means to you. The screen faded to black, and for once the silence that followed wasn't empty, it was earned.